Have have you watched Adolescence yet? Have you watched it? It's a Netflix limited series. It's about a 13-year-old who is accused of murder. It's a commentary on knife violence in the UK, which is not so different from gun violence here in the US. And I'm just wondering, have you watched it yet? Because if you have, we need to talk about it. There's a whole bunch of stuff as a parenting and mental health expert that I want to unpack with you. If you have not watched it, don't watch this video because there are going to be some spoilers and I don't want to ruin it for you. So go watch it and come back. Let me know what you think because there are some things to talk about here. The conversations that I have seen have either been about the amazing cinematography, the fact that it was done in all one shot, which is mind-blowing to me, or about the commentary it is making about the world. Now, I want to open a new conversation, a third option, which is what do we do from here? Where do we go? How do we take this as the start of a lesson in order to help our kids, in order to help ourselves, so that less people need to struggle, need to suffer, so there can be less violence and less harm and less heartbreak and less tragedy? Because I do believe that things can change. And I believe that this show did such a beautiful job of outlining the trajectory of what happened. It was not destined. It was not, of course, Jamie was going to do something horrible. That's not the story they told. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. There are three things that I really want to talk to you about. One is the way they showed the complexity of human emotions, I thought was beautiful. Two, the way we want to believe that people that do these horrible acts are monsters. And yet in this show, they show how this kid was not a monster. They showed the journey that led to this horrific act. And three, I want to talk about being proactive. Where do we go from here instead of being reactive, which is what we see in the show Adolescence, right? Everyone was reactive to the hard thing rather than being proactive. They even talk about it. It was beautiful. So let's start with number one. The complexity of human emotions was beautiful, right? From the very first episode where we see the cop who comes in so strong, so clear, so powerful, so definitive, right? He tells the dad how it goes. He takes charge. He draws boundaries. He knows how to do the thing. But then we also see him struggling with his own addiction to nicotine and cigarettes. And so he's eating apples instead of doing that. And we see him struggle in his own personal relationships to connect with his son. And so there's this beautiful range there. We see that with the therapist who in the room is collected and does her job so well. So many thoughts on that. We'll talk about that another time. But who walked out of the room to take a breath and collect herself when it really impacted her. And at the end of the scene, that episode, the scene where you see her like feel all of the feelings, right? She kept it together in front of Jamie, but then she felt it all. So beautiful. And then there's Jamie's emotional journey from being a really scared kid in the beginning to kind of stepping into the person he's being told he is, to owning his action in a way that changes who he is how I saw it, to the parents, especially the dad, the stress and the struggle and his own feelings of believing his kid and then being horrified by his kid and then blaming himself and then dealing with the bullying that is happening to him from the outside, from the harassment, just all of those influences and how that rains down on him. What do we do with that information? I love giving you solutions, not just information. So here's what I see in that. It is the reminder that no matter what glimpse you see of somebody, it is just a piece of their world, that there is stress and there is joy and there is beauty and there is heartache in all of our lives that we're not necessarily seeing of others. And so if you interact with someone and it is not graceful on your part or theirs, can you give it a little bit of kindness, a little bit of breath, a little bit of understanding that maybe something's going on that you don't know or that you don't understand or that feels different for you than for them? Can we give people more the benefit of the doubt? Can we walk with more compassion? And can we be kind even when people aren't necessarily kind to us, because it might just be where they are in that moment? Okay, number two, the journey of mental health, right? We want to believe that somebody who stabs someone to death or shoots someone is a monster. And I believe that most of the time that's not the case. And that's not what I saw in this journey with Jamie. I saw in the first episode this sweet, scared, confused kid who did a horrible thing. Please do not misunderstand. I am not taking away that his actions were horrific and detrimental in more ways than we can talk about right here. It is not okay. But I think he is a good person who did a bad thing. And I think that is more often the case than we think. As the story unfolds, as the episodes go on, we see all of the pieces that happened to him that led him to that moment. We hear about how he was bullied. We hear how he and his friends were bullied. We hear how he came across some toxic information on the internet that impacted the way he thought about people and relationships and girls and his own ability to be a man. I put it in quotes because I don't know that that's the information he was being given. It's not by my definition. He then asked somebody out and was brave. A little misguided as to why he was brave, but he was brave. And she shamed him, not just in person in that moment, but she then turned it into cyberbullying. And he had lots of people jump on that bandwagon against him. And then it sounds like he just meant to scare her. And that night, the way it unfolded, what I heard was he just meant to scare her. It's what the friend said when he got arrested. I gave him the knife. He just meant to scare her. I didn't think he'd do what he did. My guess is that he did intend to just scare her. And when he did, she wasn't scared. And she did something else that shamed him. And his emotional being, his mental health broke in that moment. And that's why he stabbed her. That's why that story went the way it went. And that is what happens in real life, that there's just a moment where we're pushed too far. Now, for most of us, that moment when we're pushed too far, it does not end up in such a horrific, devastating action. It's yelling at our kids. It's, acting out in a more measured way. It doesn't go that far. But I didn't see a child who was destined to do something horrible. I saw a child who went through too many hard things and didn't have the skills to cope anymore and did something horrific. And I know in episode 3, we see a lot more of Jamie's kind of back and forthness. We see this angry side of him. We see his intimidating side. But I also read that as that's the journey that happened. He went from being this good kid. Who did a horrific thing. And then for 7 months was in this facility where he was treated as a violent criminal. He was around other people who were also in that boat with him, where fighting was part of the culture, where yelling happened all the time, where other people were really, really struggling and suffering. And so he adopted that as his way of being. He didn't learn anything better in that space, so he became the person that instance dictated. And I wonder what would happen if he did something else in that moment, if another trajectory was happening, right? You hear the therapist say, take advantage of all of the mental health support this facility has to offer. What would it have been like if he did? What would have changed? And then in episode 4, we hear him say he's going to plead guilty, which makes me think maybe he did take some advantage of the mental health support and started to realize what was happening inside of him and what the anger was doing to him and what the broken pieces were and what the hurt parts made him hurt about, right? He said he started drawing because it brought him joy again. I wonder if he is putting himself back together. So what's the takeaway here? What I want you to take away is that good people do bad things. And that doesn't mean that they are a bad person. There is goodness in every human. I believe that. We can't always see it and their actions don't always reflect it. But there is a big difference between what we do and who we are. And that's what I saw in Jamie. He is not a horrible person. He did a horrible thing. And that distinction is powerful. And in your life, may you never come across a tragedy like that. But can you separate when someone does something bad from who they are and still treat them with kindness and compassion and dignity and respect? we can, we might be able to change the world. Okay. Third part of the piece of the conversation that I want to have with you today is how do we be proactive? In the last episode, they had a beautiful scene with the parents talking about, like, did we miss it? Was there something we could have done? And what I saw that in the parents saying, we saw things and life was really busy and we didn't stop soon enough to check in with him. And if they had, would the trajectory have been different? And I think it would have been. And so I'm saying this to you as a person who could know somebody who's struggling. Can you take the step today so that tomorrow isn't horrible? Can you check in even when they don't want it? Can you show them love? Can you demonstrate love? Can you connect with your kids, even your teenagers who just want to be left alone in their room? Can you make sure that they know you are there to listen to them, that you are there, that you care about them, that you love them, no matter what's going on, that you've got their back? No matter what's going on, no matter how busy it is, you will be there for them. Because I believe that would have changed the trajectory of the story in Adolescence. If the mom talked about how she would see the light on at 1 a.m, knock on the door and tell him to go to sleep, and he wouldn't say anything back. She didn't check in. She didn't do anything more. She just made sure he got to sleep, which I think is really human. But take the extra step and check in. So what does that look like? What are those action steps? You know, I got you covered. So here's a list of action steps you can take. Tell them you love them more often. I'm just reading my list for you. Talk to your kids about their feelings, even when they don't want to talk about it. Tell them stories about how you're feeling. Keep asking and tell them, you know, like, you don't have to say anything right now. I just want you to know the door is open. Ask them what's going on in their world without judgment, right? Teach them how to navigate hard emotions. I think most of us as adults, being angry, being overwhelmed, being stressed, being anxious, being depressed, we don't have the tools for it. So how can we teach our kids? My suggestion is you learn. You learn how to do it. Learn how to navigate your anger in a way you would want your kid to do it. If we get in a fight, I'm going to walk away before I say something I regret. I'm going to walk away before I push you or hurt you in any way. Teach yourself that, then teach your kids to walk away. If you're overwhelmed, ask for help. If you're depressed, look for a therapist. But you have to model it, and then you have to teach your kids it. So talk to them about it, but also show them what it is. If you are demonstrating inappropriate responses to frustration, to anger, to disappointment, if you are showing them it's okay to yell and get loud and get close to people when you're mad, they're going to think that's okay too. And it's not. You can go yell out in the backyard at the trees, but yelling at a person means that we don't know how to manage our anger. So learn how to do that. If Jamie had learned how to manage his anger, learned how to cope with his shame, had someone advocating for him, his story would have been different. Okay. Share your morals and values. Tell your kids what you think is right and what you think is wrong in the world. One of the conversations we kept hearing in Adolescence was the conversation about videos that he was hearing, about these rules that are made up, about what it must be to be a man, to navigate the world, what women want, all of that. I don't think that's what his parents thought, but they didn't explicitly say, this is how you treat women. So he didn't know. He heard it from somebody else, and he assumed that when she was shamed, she'd be weak and he could ask her out. That's not okay. If he thought she'd be hurt and I could comfort her, that would have been awesome. But that wasn't what he said. And so if you think that you should never hit a woman, tell your kids that. If you think that fists are never the way to solve a fight, tell your kids that. If you believe all people are worthy of love, tell your kids that. If you think that everyone should have a roof over their head and food to eat and feel safe in their home, tell your kids that. Because they're going to believe you before they believe anybody else. But if you're not explicitly telling them, they're going to believe other people. right? So they're going to think certain things are wrong because someone else out there on the internet in this world of influencers is going to tell your kid what to think about certain people. My belief is that love is love. I already said that all people have goodness inside, and it's what we do that can be bad, not who we are. I believe that everyone has a right to safety. I believe that we are all equal. Those are the things I would teach my kids. What do you need to teach your kids? Okay. Moving on, giving you more tools. Life is busy. It can be hard to find time to connect, to sit down and bond with your kids. It's also critical. It's really, really, really important. And the show shows that. Life was just so busy that they just thought it was going to be okay. Don't assume it's going to be okay. Make sure it is by showing up, by spending time with your kids, by carving it out. We see this with the cop where his son isn't talking to him. And finally he's like, let's go get some food. Like, let's go eat some French fries. They call them chips, right? He's like, let's go get chips. Where do you want to go? And his son was like, okay. We have to be the adults and we have to make the time for that connection. Even if your kids don't want it, keep offering it, keep asking, keep showing up. Keep being there for them because that's how they know that you're there for them, that you'll catch them. Ask them questions and listen with curiosity. Especially as our kids become teenagers, we need to actually just be curious, wonder about their life. When they do things that we wouldn't do, we need to not judge that. We need to just wonder, like, how'd that feel for you? Are you glad that you did that? Did that make sense for you? What happened? What happened next? Oh my gosh, tell me more. Those kind of things allow them to feel the freedom to be themselves. When we judge them, when we tell them they made the wrong answer or didn't do the right thing or they should have done something else, well, our teenagers shut down because they're trying to find their own way. You got to let them make mistakes. But the only way you're going to know if they made mistakes is if they feel safe telling you about what they did. So ask them questions and then listen with curiosity. Okay, last one. Last thing is be kind. The world is hard and complicated, and I need a drink of water. Apologies. So be kind to your family, be kind to strangers, but mostly be kind to your family. Give them compliments. Tell them what they did that you are proud of. Show them what patience is. Show them what respect is. Treat them with respect so that they treat you with respect. If there were more moments of kindness in Jamie's life, I think his story would have been different. But very few people in his world were showing him kindness. And I think he had very kind parents. I think the show demonstrated they were kind. They were also busy. So how can we make sure we are building our kids up? We are encouraging them. We are being respectful. We are asking them to be kind to other people. We are asking them to be kind to us. And be kind to strangers because we don't know what their world is like. We don't know what's going on out there. We don't know what their life experience is. And so have grace for them. Okay, so those are my thoughts for the moment. There very well may be more. What would you add to this list? What are the mental health lessons? What are the parenting lessons that you saw in this show that you thought, wow, if this starts a conversation, if this changes something, that'd be amazing. I want to know your thoughts. I want to know what else you've been thinking about since you've watched Adolescence, or what conversations you're having with your kids, or what conversations you're struggling to have with your kids after watching it. Like, I'm a big fan of watching this with your teenager and talking about it as you go. So if you need strategies and tools as you go about this conversation, like, please let me know. I will happily support you in how to do that well. Because I think this show, this limited series, could be the start of an amazing ripple that can change the mental health and the family dynamic of your family. And if that ripple continues, we can really make a huge difference in this world. All right, so thank you for sticking around, watching this whole video. I am Dr. Marcy. If we haven't met before, thank you for staying. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with me as well in the comments. Subscribe so you know when I add other videos, and know that I am here to help in any way that I can around the things that I can help with. Have a beautiful, wonderful, amazing day, and know that you are amazing.